There are moments in life that don't come with a warning. They don't knock politely. They don't give you time to prepare yourself. They just arrive. Sometimes in the middle of an ordinary day, sometimes late at night when everything is quiet, sometimes in a conversation you didn't expect to go that way. And before you even realize it, something has shifted. You're sitting there, maybe at the edge of your bed, maybe in your car after a long day, maybe at the kitchen table where you've had so many normal evenings before, and suddenly nothing feels normal anymore. You look at your life, at your situation, at the thing that just happened, and you feel something you didn't plan for. Not just pain, but confusion. The kind of confusion that doesn't go away quickly, the kind that lingers, the kind that makes you sit there longer than you expected, staring at nothing, replaying everything. Because it's not just that something happened, it's that you don't understand why it happened. And that changes everything. You didn't just go through pain. You went through something that changed you. Not just your situation, you. The way you think, the way you feel, the way you look at people, the way you look at yourself. And if you're honest, the hardest part wasn't even what happened. It was not understanding why God allowed it. That's the part that keeps coming back to you. Not during the busy hours of the day when you're distracted, but in the quiet moments, when you're alone, when your mind finally slows down. That's when the question shows up again. God, why did you let this happen? And you don't always say it out loud. Sometimes it's just a thought. Sometimes it's just a feeling you carry. But it's there. Because you prayed. You really did. You trusted. You tried to do things right. You believed that if you walked in faith, things would work out a certain way. And then they didn't. And that gap between what you believed would happen and what actually happened, that gap is where the confusion lives. Because you're trying to make sense of it. You're trying to connect what you know about God with what you just experienced. And right now, they don't seem to match. Because if God is good, why did this hurt so much? If God is faithful, why did this fall apart? If God is with you, why did you feel so alone in that moment? These are not small questions. These are not weak questions. These are real questions. And if we're honest, they don't come from a place of rebellion. They come from a place of trying to understand. You're not trying to walk away from God. You're trying to hold on to Him while everything else feels like it's slipping. And maybe that's where you are right now. Still holding on, but confused. Still believing, but not clear. Still praying, but wondering if your prayers are being heard the way you hoped. And in the middle of that, I want to offer you something. Not an easy answer, not a quick explanation, but a different way of seeing what you've been through. What if it wasn't destruction, but acceleration? I know, that doesn't feel right at first, because when you're in it, it feels like something has been taken from you. It feels like loss. It feels like something you needed is no longer there. It feels like you've been set back. But what if you weren't being set back? What if you were being moved forward in a way you didn't expect? Because sometimes what we lose, we were never meant to carry into the next season. Sometimes what falls apart cannot go where we're going. And God, seeing the full picture, allows things to shift that we would have held on to, not to hurt us, but to move us. And I know that's not easy to accept because we would all prefer a different process. We would rather grow without losing anything. We would rather move forward without discomfort. We would rather become who God called us to be without going through moments that break our understanding. But that's not how it happens, because comfort doesn't change you. Comfort keeps things the same. Comfort keeps you in a place that feels familiar, even if it's no longer helping you grow. And so sometimes things have to change. Sometimes something has to be shaken. Sometimes something has to be removed. Not because your life is falling apart, but because something deeper is being rearranged. And I know, right now, that may not feel like comfort. It may not even feel like hope, but it is the beginning of understanding. Because what you've been through is not just something that happened to you. It's something that is doing something in you. And slowly, as we walk through this together, that understanding will begin to grow. Not all at once, but little by little, until one day, you don't just see what happened, you begin to see why. Pain doesn't always come in loud moments. It doesn't always look like something everyone can see. Sometimes it's very quiet. It's in the small changes, the subtle shifts, the things that don't seem like much at first, but over time, they start to add up. You wake up in the morning like you always do. You go through your routine. You brush your teeth, maybe make some coffee, check your phone. Everything looks the same on the outside, but something inside feels different. You can't quite explain it. You just know something is off. Maybe it started with a relationship, someone you were close to, someone you trusted, someone you thought would always be there in your life. And then, little by little, things changed. The conversations became shorter. The connection didn't feel as strong. You started to notice distance, even when you were sitting in the same room. And you tried to fix it. You tried to talk about it. You tried to understand what was happening, but somehow it just kept slipping. And one day, you realized what you had wasn't what it used to be. And that realization, it hurts in a quiet way. Because it's not just about losing a person. It's about losing what that connection meant to you. Or maybe it wasn't a relationship. Maybe it was your work, something you put years into, something that gave you structure, purpose, identity. You knew who you were in that space. You knew what your role was. You knew where you were going. And then something happened. A decision, a change, a door that closed. And suddenly, the place that once felt stable feels uncertain, and you're left trying to figure out where you fit now. Or maybe the hardest part isn't even external. Maybe it's internal. Maybe it's the version of you that feels different now. The version of you that doesn't react the same way. The version of you that feels tired in ways you didn't feel before. The version of you that questions things you used to be sure about. And that's a strange place to be, because you're still you, but you don't feel like the same person. And in the middle of all of this, life doesn't stop. People still expect you to show up. You still have responsibilities. You still have things to take care of. So you do what you have to do. You keep going. You go to work. You answer messages. You have conversations. You smile when it's appropriate. You say, "I'm fine," when someone asks how you are. And maybe in that moment, you even believe it. But then there are other moments, the quiet ones, when you're driving alone, when you're sitting in your room at night, when the TV is on, but you're not really watching it. That's when it catches up with you. That's when you feel it. That's when the thoughts start coming back. What is happening to me? Why does this feel so heavy? Why can't I just move on? And in the middle of those thoughts, there's another layer. Because you're not just dealing with what happened. You're trying to understand it in the context of your faith. I trust God, but I don't understand Him right now. I believe He has a plan, but I can't see it. I know He's with me, but I feel alone. And that tension, it's exhausting. Because you're trying to hold on to belief while everything around you feels uncertain. You're trying to stay grounded while your emotions are shifting. You're trying to keep moving forward when part of you just wants to stop and understand. And sometimes your prayers reflect that. They're not long, they're not structured, they're not even polished. They're simple, honest. God, I don't understand this. God, I don't know what you're doing. God, I need you. And sometimes it feels like there's no response. Not right away, not in the way you expected. And that silence, it can feel heavy. It can make you wonder if you're being heard. It can make you question what's really happening. But here's what you don't see in that moment. Even when it feels quiet, something is still happening. Even when you don't hear anything, something is still moving. Because what feels like everything is falling apart may actually be something coming together in a way you can't see yet. And I know that's hard to accept, because when you're in the middle of it, all you can feel is what you've lost. All you can see is what's no longer there. All you can think about is how things used to be. But there is more happening than what you can see, more than what you can feel, more than what you understand right now. And slowly, over time, that understanding will begin to grow. Not all at once, but in a way that changes how you see your pain. Not as something that defines you, but as something that is shaping you. even if you don't fully see it yet.
There is something we do without even realizing it when life starts to hurt. We'll try to explain it. We try to make sense of it. We try to give it a meaning that our mind can hold on to. Because if we can understand it, maybe we won't feel so lost in it. And most of the time, the conclusion we come to feels very personal. And we don't just say this situation is hard. We go a step further. We start saying things like, something's wrong with me. Or even worse, we start believing it. Because when something important falls apart, especially something you invested your heart into, it doesn't just affect your situation. Have you ever lost touches your identity? Not the loss recently, and I'm gonna see if it'll bless you. Have you ever lost not enough? Did I make the wrong decision? Did I miss something that I should have seen? Could I have prevented this if I had done something differently? And these questions, they don't just come once. They repeat themselves. They show up when you're doing something simple, like washing dishes or folding clothes. They show up when you're driving and your mind drifts back to the past. They show up when you're trying to sleep. The loss won't slow down. And slowly, without realizing it, you move from experiencing pain to identifying with it. I lost recently, and I'm gonna see if it'll bless you. Have you ever lost recently, and I'm gonna see if it'll bless you? Begin to feel, I am broken. And that word, broken, carries so much weight. That doesn't just describe what happened. Let's describe how you see yourself. As if something inside of you has been damaged. If something that once worked no longer works the same way. As if your mind aren't whole anymore. And when you start to see yourself that way, where you ever lost recently, and I'm gonna see if it'll bless you. Have you ever lost recent stuff? The most recently, and I'm gonna see if it'll bless you. That's the way you trust, the way you dream. Because if you believe you are broken, you hold back. You protect yourself. Think as much. You don't expect as much. You don't hope the same way you used to. And on the surface, it looks like wisdom. Underneath it, it's fear. Fear of going through that same pain again. Fear of trusting something that might not last. Fear of stepping forward, only to be disappointed again. And that fear, it begins to shape your life in quiet ways. You don't take certain chances. I think it's very see if it'll bless you. Have you ever lost hope in some way? You don't allow yourself to fully engage with new opportunities because somewhere inside of you, there's a voice saying, be careful. Don't go too far. Don't trust too quickly. Don't expect too much. And while that voice is trying to protect you, it can also limit you because it keeps you connected to a misunderstanding. The misunderstanding that what happened broke you. But what if that's not true? What if what you are calling brokenness is actually transformation? And I know that doesn't feel right at first because transformation doesn't feel good in the moment. Transformation feels uncomfortable. It feels unfamiliar. It feels like something is being taken away because in a way it is, but not in the way you think. Because not everything that leaves your life, some things are being removed because they cannot support where you're going. And that's hard to see when you're still attached to it. When something has been part of your life for a long time, when something is meaning, you don't easily see that it may have reached its capacity in your life. But because while you're in it, it feels normal. Or it feels like it belongs. It feels like part of who you are. And when it starts to shift, you interpret it as loss. You interpret it as something going wrong. But what if nothing went wrong? What if something actually went right and imported you didn't expect? Because sometimes we confuse permanence with purpose. We assume that because something mattered, it was meant to last forever. But that's not always true. Sometimes something comes into your life for a season, to shape you, to teach you, to grow you. Not because it failed, but because it finished. And if you ever allow to understand that, you will spend a lot of time grieving things that were never meant to stay. I'm in me and I'm gonna see if it'll bless you. You will interpret transitions as tragedy, and you will miss what was actually happening. Because here is the truth that is not always easy to accept. Not everything God allows. He uses the disappointment. He uses the delay. He uses the rejection. He uses the moments where you felt overlooked. I think it's very recently, you ever lost recently, and I'm gonna see if it'll bless you. Happy, not because he enjoys your pain, but because he sees something beyond it. And sometimes what feels like rejection, what feels like something being taken away, is actually something being repositioned. What feels like an ending is actually preparation. But you don't see that immediately because you're still looking at it through the lens of what you lost. Just a couple things I've lost recently, and I'm gonna see if it'll bless you. Trying to understand why it changed. And from that place, it's hard to recognize that something deeper is happening because all you can feel, all you can focus on is what used to be. Also, all you can think about is how things felt before. And in that space, you say, this must be the end. But what if it's not? What if what you call the end? What if what you labeled as failure, God labeled as formation? What if what you thought was breaking you was actually reshaping you? Because sometimes the process of becoming feels like the loss of who you used to be, and that can feel uncomfortable. It can feel unfamiliar. That can feel like something is wrong. But it may actually be a sign that Apost's growth requires change. And change requires release. And release rarely feels good, but it is necessary. And that shift, not outside of you, but inside of you. And once that begins, you are ready to see something you couldn't see before. Things in your life. Because what was happening to you was not destruction. It was something else. Something deeper, something intentional. It's exploration. There is a moment, the most unnoticed, where something begins to make sense. Not all at once, not in a way that answers every question. Most recently, and I'm gonna see if it'll bless you, can be one of the most frustrating. Maybe what I've been going through is not just pain. That it bless you. Maybe there's something more happening here. And this is where the shift begins. Because once you start to see that you are not being broken, God was using pressure of the things I've lost be, and I'm gonna see if it'll bless you. Have you ever lost them on BF? Because when we hear the word pressure, we think of stress. We think of weight. We think of something we want to escape. Or when we think of something that feels heavy, uncomfortable, overwhelming. I'm gonna see if it'll bless you, is not the enemy. Important. What if pressure is the environment where growth actually happens? Think about it in a simple, everyday way. Nothing develops without pressure. Even the simplest things in life. If you have ever tried to build something, if you have ever worked toward a goal, you know it doesn't come without effort. If you've ever grown in any area of your life, you know it required something from you. And that something often felt like pressure, deadlines, expectations, challenges, moments where you had to stretch beyond what felt easy. And the truth is, the same principle applies to your life in a deeper way. Because if everything stayed comfortable, things in your life. Have you ever lost an important or unimportant? I'm not sure. Nothing disrupted your routine. You would never move. You would remain in what feels familiar, even if that familiarity is limiting you. Even if it's keeping you from becoming more. And sometimes he sees where you are and he sees where you are meant to be. And the distance between those two places cannot be crossed through comfort. It requires movement. It's wage change. It requires pressure. And that pressure, sometimes it looks like a situation that forces you to think differently. Sometimes it looks like a loss that makes you reevaluate everything. Sometimes it looks like a disruption that removes the option to stay the same. As long as staying the same is comfortable, you will choose it. Even if it's not helping you grow. Even if it's not aligned with your purpose. Even if it's holding you back from what you are capable of becoming. And so sometimes God allows things to shift, not to harm you, but to move you, not to destroy you, but to develop you, because he is more committed to your purpose than your comfort. And that's not always easy to accept. A couple of things I've lost recently, and I'm gonna see if it'll bless you. Have you ever lost? We want to grow, but we want it to feel easy. We want to move forward, but we don't want anything to change. We want transformation, but we don't want to go through the process that creates it. But that's not how it works. Because pressure does something that comfort cannot do. It reveals your capacity. It shows you what you're capable of handling. It is what you're capable of becoming. Strength that you didn't know you had. Resilience that you didn't realize was there. You don't discover those things when everything is easy. You discover them when you are stretched. Pressure also removes what cannot go with you. It exposes what is no longer aligned, no longer supportive, what is no longer necessary for where you're going. And the one of that removal feels painful. It is also protective, because carrying the wrong things into your future will limit what you can do when you get there. And then things in your life. It accelerates growth. It speeds up a process that might have taken years if everything had stayed comfortable. For its decisions. It forces clarity. It forces movement, and suddenly you find yourself growing in ways you didn't expect, learning things you didn't plan to learn, becoming someone you didn't even realize you could be. And it happens faster than you imagined. Not because you chose it, but because you were placed in a situation that demanded it. And when you begin to see pressure this way, something shifts inside of you. It stops feeling like something that is against you, and it starts to look like something that is working for you. Not in a way that removes the pain, but in a way that gives it meaning. Because now you're not just asking, why did this happen? You're starting to see, what is this producing? And that question changes everything. Because now, and I'm gonna see if it'll bless you, you're moving toward understanding. The funny, losing stuff. You're beginning to see that what felt like it was slowing you down was actually pushing you forward. That what felt like a setback, that what felt like pressure. And once you see that, you can never fully go back to seeing it the old way. Imagine had something deeper. You're not being broken. You were being prepared. You were being shaped. The other law were being accelerated. And everything you went through was moving you forward, even when it didn't feel like it. There was a moment that doesn't come with a loud announcement. No one claps, no one points it out, but you'll feel it. You notice it in the small ways first, but the way you respond to things, the way certain conversations don't pull you in like they used to, the way you pause before reacting. You would have spoken quickly, and at first it feels unfamiliar. It's almost like you're watching yourself from the outside. Like, why am I not reacting the way I used to? Doesn't this bother me the same way anymore? Why do I feel different, even though nothing around me has fully changed yet? And if you're not careful, you might even start to question it. You might think, am I becoming cold? But what if you're not losing something? Because the truth is, pain doesn't just pass through your life. It leaves something behind. It shapes you. It changes how you see things. And while you were focused on what you lost, something was quietly being built inside of you. Not all at once. Not in a way you could easily recognize in the moment. But slowly, consistently, something was changing. Ones that had shifted. Things in your life. You don't think the same way anymore. Things in your life. You don't just go with whatever feels right in the moment. You think about consequences. Think about alignment. Baby, and I'm gonna see if it'll bless you. Can be one of the most frustrating things in your life. And that didn't come from comfort. That came from experience. That came from moments where something felt right but didn't last. Where you trusted something and it didn't hold. Moments where you had to sit with the reality that not everything that looks good. And those moments, things, even if you didn't realize it at the time. And now, without even trying, you see things differently. You also have boundaries now. That's a big one. Because before you may have given more than you should have. You may have stayed longer than you needed to. You may have allowed things that didn't align with your value because you didn't fully see your value yet. But now, you're not as quick to say yes. You have a loss willing to tolerate things that drain you. You have things I've allowed. You don't feel the need to explain yourself to everyone. And that's not because you've become hard. It's because you've become aware of your energy, aware of your worth. And then awareness, it didn't come from reading something. It didn't come from hearing a message. It came from living through something. It came from giving too much in the past. from pouring into spaces that didn't pour back into you, from realizing sometimes in a painful way that protecting your peace is not selfish. It's necessary. And then there's your discernment, that quiet voice inside of you, one that says, this doesn't feel right. You always had it, but you didn't always listen to it. Sometimes you ignored it. Sometimes you pushed past it. But now you pay attention. Listen to me, and I'm going to see if it'll bless you, because you've seen what happens when you don't. You've experienced the consequences of ignoring that inner signal. And so now, not blindly, but intentionally, because you've learned that God doesn't just speak through big signs. He speaks through awareness, through wisdom, through that subtle sense that something is either aligned. And all of these changes, they didn't happen overnight. The things I've allowed piece by piece, through everything you went through the moments that didn't make sense, through the seasons that felt uncomfortable, through the situations that stretched you. And when you take a step back, when you really look at it honestly, you realize something important. You didn't just survive, you evolved. You didn't just get through it, you became someone new. And that matters because it's easy to focus on what you lost. It's easy to look back and think about what used to be. It's easy to miss the old version of your life. That if you stay there, you miss what was gained. You miss the strength that was built. The other loss, you miss the clarity that was developed. You miss the awareness that now guides you. And this version of you, the one who sees differently, the one who sees differently, the one who thinks more carefully, the one who moves with intention, this version didn't exist before. This version was formed, shaped, developed through everything you experienced. And here's the truth that changes how you see it all. God didn't just bring you out, He made you different. He didn't just remove you from a situation, He refined you through it. He didn't just help you survive, He prepared you to become. And yeah, the lost things, it came with pain. Yes, it came with moments you wouldn't choose again. It came with loss. Without those moments, this version of you wouldn't exist. Very simple, that is stronger. The version that is wiser. The version that is more aware of who you are. And that shift from who you used to be to who you are now. That's not something to grieve. That's something to recognize. Because you are no longer operating from the same place. You are no longer seeing life through the same lens. That means ain't your loss moving the same way. Then that means you are ready for something different. Something greater. Something that requires this version of you. Because the identity shift, it's preparation for purpose. At some point after the pain settles, after the confusion begins to clear, after you start to recognize that you've changed, a new question begins to rise. Not why did this happen, but because when you've been through something heavy, you don't just want to move past it. Things I've lost recently, and I'm going to see if it'll bless you. Can be want to know it meant something. You want to know it wasn't random. You want to know it wasn't wasted. And the truth is, the thing you went through was wasted. Not the pain, not the confusion, the moments where you felt like you didn't understand anything. But because all of it, even when you couldn't see it, even when it didn't make sense, even when it felt like you were losing more than you were gaining, this thing was being built. And now when you look back, you start to notice patterns. You start to realize that what hurt you, that what challenged you, also strengthened you. That what confused you also deepened your understanding. And I'm going to see if it'll bless you, because the pain was not just an experience. It's a process that shaped how you think, a process that built your resilience, a process that prepared you for something ahead. And here's where it becomes even more meaningful, because your purpose is often connected to what you've been through, separate from it, not unrelated to it, but directly connected. Because the things that affected you the most, the things that stayed with you, the things that left a mark on your life, those are often the areas where you are called to make a difference. Because you understand them in a way others don't. You've lived through them. You've felt them. You've had to navigate them. And that experience, it gives you something. It gives you insight. It gives you perspective. It gives you a depth that cannot be taught because it was lived. And that's what makes it powerful. Because your story, it's preparation for someone else's healing. It's preparation for someone else's breakthrough. Things I've lost, preparation for someone else's understanding. But I'm lost recently, and I'm going to see if it'll bless you. Because one day, someone else is going to be standing where you once stood. Confused, hurt, lost in trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. Bless you. And in that moment, they not from a distance, not from theory, but from experience, from understanding, from a place that says, I know what that feels like. And that changes everything. Because now, what once felt like a burden or bridge between where you were and where someone else is trying to go. And suddenly, your pain has purpose. To bless you, your story has meaning. Your experience has value. Because it's not just something you went through, then it's something you can use to help, to guide, to encourage, to bring clarity where there was once confusion. And that's the shift from asking, why did this happen? To realizing this prepared me for something. What hurt you actually shaped you. What you went through was not separate from your calling. It was part of it. And that realization, it doesn't erase the pain, but it gives it meaning. It gives it direction. It gives it purpose. Because now, you're not just someone who survived something. You have a loss recently, and I'm going to see if it'll bless something. Prepared for impact. Prepared for purpose. Prepared for what's next. And whether you fully see it yet or not, you are closer to that purpose than you've ever been before. There comes a moment when looking back is no longer enough. You've replayed it. You've thought about it from every angle. You've tried to understand it. Replaying it, make sense of it. And little by little, something inside you has begun to settle. Not everything is clear, but something is clearer than it was before. You're starting to see that what you went through had meaning. You're starting to realize that you didn't just lose something, you learned something. You're starting to feel that you're not the same person anymore. And that's when a different question begins to rise. Why did this happen? What do I do now? Because once you begin to understand, you can't go back to the same way of living. You can't go back to thinking the same way. You can't go back to ignoring what you now see clearly. Something in you has shifted. And now your life has to reflect that shift. But here's the truth. Just because you've grown doesn't mean everything will naturally fall into place. Just because you've changed doesn't mean your environment has. Just because you've learned doesn't mean your habits will immediately align with what you've learned. That's why this part matters. Because how you respond now. And it starts with something simple but powerful. You have to reframe your story. For a long time, you've been calling it loss. You've been calling it something that went wrong. You've been saying that was the moment everything fell apart. And in a way, that's how it felt. But if you stay there, you limit what that experience can become in your life. Because what if it wasn't just loss? What if it was training? What if that moment wasn't just something that hurt you, but something that prepared you? Think about it. Everything you went through taught you something. It showed you what works and what doesn't. It showed you who you can trust and who you need to be careful with. It showed you how you respond under pressure. It showed you where you need to grow. And when you begin to see it that way, the meaning changes. You're no longer someone who just lost something. And you're someone who gained awareness. You're someone who gained experience. You're someone who gained clarity. And that changes how you move forward. Because now, you're one of the most advanced. And that understanding becomes your strength. And the second thing you have to do, because now you see something you didn't fully see before. So we lost recently, and I'm going to see if it'll bless you. Not every connection supports who you are becoming. This is where it gets real. God, sometimes the people you've been around for a long time are not aligned with where you're going. Not because they're bad people, but because they did something wrong. But because your life is moving in a different direction. And if you ignore that, If you stay in environments that don't support your growth, you will feel it. You ever lost recently, and I'm gonna see if it'll bless you. You ever lost, you will feel pulled back into patterns you've already outgrown. You will feel the tension between who you are becoming and what you are surrounded by. And that tension, it's not there to confuse you. It's there to see if it'll bless you. It's there to show you something. Well, it's just there to help you recognize what belongs and what doesn't. Because the right relationships, they don't just sit next to you. They strengthen you. They challenge you. They support you. Grow growth. They help you become more of who you are meant to be. For the wrong ones, they drain you. They keep you connected to a version of yourself that no longer fits. And now that you've gone through what you've gone through, you can afford that. Because you're better than anyone. But because you're responsible for protecting what God has developed in you. And sometimes that means creating distance. Sometimes that means setting boundaries. Sometimes that means saying no, when before you would have said yes. And that's not rejection. Then that's alignment. And the third thing, this is the one that sustains everything else. To learn to walk in discipline, not just emotion. Because emotions change. There will be days when you feel strong. Days when you feel motivated. Days when you feel like everything is coming together. But there will also be days when you don't feel like it. Days when old thoughts try to come back. Days when doubt shows up again. Days when you question if you're really moving forward. And if you rely only on how you feel, you will move in circles. You will start and stop. To question, you will build and then step back. And no problem loss. You will make progress and then hesitate. But discipline keeps you steady. It keeps you moving forward, even when your emotions are uncertain. It helps you build consistency. Just something's important. Have you ever lost recently? And I'm gonna see if it'll bless you. Have you ever lost recently? And I'm gonna see if it'll bless you. Have you ever lost recently? And I'm gonna see if it'll bless you. Have you ever lost recently? And I'm gonna see if it'll apply. Because growth doesn't end when the pain is over. Growth continues. And the way you sustain that growth is through making choices that align with who you are becoming. Through doing what is right, even when it doesn't feel easy. Because you are not the same person anymore. Your life has to reflect that. So now, all of you think differently. That's the time you choose differently. Not perfectly, but intentionally. Please, because you know something now that you didn't know before. And that knowledge, it changes how you live. Things in your life. If you go back for a moment, that moment that didn't make sense, that moment that still lingers in your memory, that moment where everything felt like it was falling apart. If you go back there now and you look at it again, it may not look the same. Not because the event itself changed, but because you did. Because now, what's felt like an ending now begins to look like a turning point. What once felt like something being taken from you now begins to look like something being prepared within you. And that shift doesn't happen overnight. As you begin to understand your life in a deeper way. As you begin to recognize that what you went through did not destroy you. It revealed you. It revealed your strength. It revealed your resilience. It revealed your ability to keep going, even when things didn't make sense. Because think about it. After everything, and you have a loss, you're still standing. You have a loss moving forward, even if it's one step at a time. And that means something. It means that what you went through did not have the power to end your story. A couple of things I've lost recently, and I'm gonna see if it'll bless you. And that changes everything. Because now, you have a loss been prepared through something. Prepared for what's next. Prepared for a level of purpose that requires the version of you that exists now, not the version you used to be. And that's why it had to happen the way it did. Not because it was easy, it's because it was painless. Not because it was necessary. Because the version of you that is stepping into what's next, but it required pressure. It required stretching. You have a large, it required moments that didn't make sense at the time. But now, not perfectly, but clearly enough to understand this one truth. You're never being broken. You have a lot, you are being refined. Recently, and I'm gonna see if it'll bless you. You are being accelerated. And that means something for you right now. That it means you are not behind, even if it feels like it. It means you are not forgotten. Even if there were moments of silence, it means you are not stuck. Even if progress has felt slow, because what has been happening in your life has not been random. It has been intentional, being part of a process that is still unfolding. And where you are right now, it's in your life. It's a transition. It's a doorway. It's into a moment that leads into something greater. So now, not about what already happened, but about how you see it and how you move forward from here. You ever lost recently, and I'm going to see if it'll bless you. I'm not something thou placed something inside of you. Something that strengthened you. Something that prepared you. Something that positioned you for what's ahead. If you ever lost recently, and I'm going to see if it'll bless you. Have you ever lost sport in pre-convict? And not all at once, but steadily. Because now, you move with awareness. You move with understanding. And most importantly, because you know something now. You know that even when it didn't make sense, God was still working. Even when it felt silent, even when it felt like loss, God was still preparing something greater. And that allows you to trust Him again. Not blindly, but confidently, because you've seen what He can do. You've lived through a process that didn't make sense at the time, but now carries meaning. So now, you release the confusion. You ever let go of the need to understand everything immediately. You ever allow yourself to trust the process. Another step forward, as someone who has been broken, but as someone who has been built. Built for purpose, built for growth, built for what's next. You ever lost because you were never being destroyed. You were being accelerated. And in where you're going,